Welcome to Her Discovered Power, the podcast where we try to provide every single good-hearted woman tools and knowledge that can empower and free you from so many of the emotional aspects that impact you most, from our earliest teachings and societal implications. I'm Dave Jones with Captive Coaching and Empowerment, and this is my mission and my passion because of what I've seen happen with the women in my life, including my own mother. We're here to help you be the she that you were meant to be. Hope you follow us, hope you share us, and hope you enjoy the.
Well, good morning, David, and welcome back to Her Discovered Power. Today, we're talking about something that almost every woman has experienced at some point in their life: anxiety. Not necessarily an anxiety disorder, but that feeling of overwhelm, worry, or just tension that shows up for us. And what I love about this conversation is we're not looking at anxiety as a weakness or something that needs to be fixed. We're looking at it as a signal, a message, or a doorway back to yourself. David, this perspective completely changed how I think about anxiety, and I truly believe it's going to resonate with a lot of our women listening today. So I'm really excited for this one.
Me too, Sherry. Anxiety is one of those most misunderstood emotional experiences I think women face, at least the coaching clients that I've had over the years. And, when women finally understand what anxiety actually is, not what they've been told that it is, everything really changes.
Hmm. Well, I think we should start right there. What is anxiety?
Well, many women believe anxiety means something's wrong with them. And it really makes us feel that way, doesn't it? They think that it means there's something weak, like you said, or overthinking, or maybe that they're too sensitive. Others interpret anxiety to mean where we can't make a decision. Like there's a flaw in us that we can't think. At least that's how it used to feel to me and so many of my clients that I work with. But anxiety, like you said, is not a flaw. It's not a malfunction. It's not evidence that we're broken. Anxiety is a signal. That's one of the most important things we have to realize. And it's one of the most important emotional signals that we have as good-hearted people. And unfortunately, Sherry, it's extremely common with good-hearted women. And I think way more than with men. And here's the reality. Anxiety is the internal emotional conflict, as you very well know, between what we want and what we feel we should do. It's like that tension between our truth and our conditioning, because that's really the origin story.
Hmm. That's so powerful because I believe most women think anxiety is something that's happening to them, something that we need to fight against. But what you're saying is it's something that's happening within us.
It really is, and that's perfectly and eloquently put. Sherry, anxiety is our emotional dashboard light, if we want to make an analogy toward our cars. It's saying that something inside us needs attention. And the more those two forces combat each other, that's the wants and the shoulds, the more they pull in opposite directions, the more intense the anxiety becomes.
Hmm. I mean, that makes sense, but I do have a question. So, is it ever like situational or something that's happening outside of us?
I'd say almost always. I had a client years ago where she was going through a really traumatic circumstance, and she basically had an anxiety attack inside of a store.
Mm.
And the circumstance was she was feeling pulled by her abusive ex. She was feeling pulled by the difficulties that her child was going through at the time. And here she was trying to do something practical by buying groceries for her and her child. And she was just bombarded by all of this stress. So it's almost always something that's going outside of us, but it's how we react to everything inside of us. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, it does. So let's talk about how it feels physically, because I think the symptoms can scare a lot of women, but you're saying, it's really just the body trying to get our attention. So maybe it's not so scary.
Well, it's scary as hell to feel, isn't it?
Well, especially an anxiety attack. Yes.
Yes. And even that sense of anxiety where it's rushing up inside of us, it shows up in our body because, like we're talking about, it's the messenger. And the only way that the anxiety has a way to alert us is physiologically. In my coaching clients over the years, the good hearted women with whom I work, they kind of describe it sometimes differently, but collectively, it's either racing heart, maybe their heat in their body is rising. They can feel their temperature just explode. There's tightening in the chest. They're restless. They feel like they're always got to do something, but they don't know what it is. They have difficulty breathing sometimes in the sense that I need to do something right now without knowing what that thing is.
Mm.
And sometimes it's so bad, like we were just talking about, it can trigger an anxiety attack. And these sensations are not random. Like we're talking about, they're the body saying you're living between two truths. The body is sending this the message, and the message is your competing truths are trying to compete for your attention, if that makes sense.
Hmm. I think that list is really helpful. I was talking to a friend yesterday and she was saying she was having anxiety. And she said it was like my chest is really tight. Mine was always difficulty breathing. So I didn't associate it. But yeah. So I feel like women blame ourselves for these reactions too.
Well, they do. And I did. Since we're talking about the good-hearted women that we seek to reach every episode, this is one of the many places that I can relate as well, because I'd feel like I had no control until I understood it. And here's the thing, the body isn't attacking you like we keep talking about, and we're saying it more than once for a reason. It's merely alerting you.
Yeah, I like that. I like it. I'm thinking of your analogy of the hand me down coat that you have used with me before, since so many women are carrying expectations that they didn't choose. Can you tell us that one? Because I love it and I think it fits right here.
I think it really drives the point home. And here's that little story. Imagine a little girl she handed a coat that belonged to her mother. It's too big, it's too heavy, it's not her style, but she's told that this is what good girls wear. So she wears it, and because she wants to be loved and accepted, she continues to wear it. She wears it because she wants to belong and not be rejected. She wears it because she doesn't know she has a choice. And in fact, in those early years as a child, she really didn't because her mom told her to wear it, right?
Hmm.
But by adulthood, the coat is torn, it's tattered, and it's still heavy and is suffocating her. Thing is, nobody ever told her she could take it off. And the coat is the word should. And you've heard me say this in our coaching, and all of my clients end up hearing about it. I believe that the word should is one of the most damaging words in the English language for good hearted people. And good hearted women, as usual, suffer with it even more than men. And anxiety in this circumstance needs to be known that it's the weight of wearing something that was never meant for us to have to wear forever. And ladies, once you get into adulthood, those shoulds really have only one bearing for anybody in our society, and that's for the people who are self centered and care only about themselves. That's where the shoulds belong. That's what most of our parents and caretakers were really trying to teach us is how to be good. But here's the thing, ladies, you are already good. You're kind, considerate, and compassionate toward others.
That hits so deeply for me because you just carry these expectations about being a good daughter, a wife, a good mother, an employee, a friend. You're just trying to do it all. And we're carrying these things that may not fit our lives anymore. And we lose sight of what we actually want.
And they think the discomfort is their fault and not the coat's fault.
It makes so much sense. It makes so much sense. You mentioned something earlier about women feeling anxiety more than men. Let's talk about why women would would experience this more.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned it that way because, as I mentioned, it does happen more with good hearted women than with men. Unfortunately, way more frequently, in my opinion. Typically, good hearted women were raised to be agreeable, responsible, self sacrificing, emotionally available. And here's another big one, non disruptive. You're not supposed to, rock the apple cart, so to speak. So when a woman's want contradicts a lifelong should that they learned in childhood, anxiety appears instantly because they're still wearing their coats. And here's the part that blows my clients away, Sherry. Good hearted women don't need external rules to be good. They don't any longer need those rules or that coat in adulthood because, like I mentioned, they're already good because they already live by a code where they consider others. They're compassionate, they're kind, they're considerate. That's the reason they don't need the old rules or that old coat because that coat represents what the expectations were in childhood that we took on that helped create the good hearted person that we are. So we continue to try to be more and more good and defer always to those expectations we learned in childhood or to the expectations of others in our adult life. That is no longer necessary because, ladies, as a good hearted woman, you're never going to do something intentionally that harms anyone else, right?
Mm. I can't tell you how many times I've said that to my friends. You don't need to worry about the rules or being good because you already are. I mean, most of the women I know who care the most about other people are often the ones that are the hardest on themselves. They're the ones that are the most conscientious, and what you're saying probably feel the most anxiety.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because they're constantly pulled between their truth and their conditioning. You see, good hearted women learn early in childhood, like I mentioned, to be good. But part of that includes sharing. Part of that included being humble, caring for others. But what they learned from that is that the only way to be good is to constantly try to be better. And Sherry, what happens if those rules are followed and that adult woman feels the need to constantly be better?
Mm. It gives me anxiety just thinking about it because you need to be more considerate, more giving, more humble. Like you're on this hamster wheel.
Exactly. And when they seek to always be more and be more better, grammatically error there, but you know what I mean. They then unknowingly begin to diminish themselves in worth. And they so commonly begin to unconsciously believe that their wants or their needs don't matter, or at least matter last.
Hmm.
And that is the absolute opposite of what needs to happen for good hearted women.
So sad. You have said to me numerous times that when I feel anxiety or a negative emotion, that it's rooted in fear. How does that fear connect to anxiety?
Think about it this way, anxiety is fear wearing a disguise. Okay. Like good hearted women were taught early to not be afraid. As a matter of fact, we all were taught that. But the ladies were also taught to be not dramatic.
Hmm.
And then, you know, it's weird because I wrote a big long article, Sherry, not too long ago that in childhood, up until really 3 years old, aren't we always nurtured when we're scared?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We cry, we go to our parents, they hold them, "Oh, there's no well, you're okay, I'll protect you." But then after 3 years old, we start hearing all of these stories, and ladies get it even more. And they start to be in a circumstance where we have to hide the fear. But fear is not a weakness. Fear is information. So even though they learn to hide the fear instead of understanding it, they learn that fear says, I don't feel safe. I don't feel in control. I'm afraid of disappointing someone. And we bring those emotional patterns into adulthood. And when fear is acknowledged, as you very well know, Sherry, and all of the good hearted ladies out there, when fear is acknowledged, it starts to lose all power. And when it's tied to anxiety, when we acknowledge the fear that is the part of anxiety, then the anxiety softens. Because when fear is accepted, not only does anxiety dissolve, but the entire essence of anxiety starts to lessen because it's that internal belief we must follow and adhere to based on those expectations of others. But our expectations as a good hearted person and a good hearted woman, their expectations of themselves are already based on being good hearted, aren't they, Sherry?
Mhm.
So the shoulds must be eliminated from a good hearted woman's vocabulary because they are already good. And it's not a matter of being good enough. Once you're good, you're already good enough. Does that sound familiar?
Oh my god, absolutely. This whole concept was actually life-changing for me. There was so much going on outside of me, and I had so much anxiety, so I couldn't change what was going on, but figuring out what the fear was that was causing anxiety was really life-changing, and I think a lot of women can relate to this, being afraid of disappointing somebody or letting someone down or fear being judged. So we call it anxiety, but it's really fear underneath.
It is. And the key really is not to suppress it, but
Mhm.
to listen to it.
Mhm.
You know, my Apache framework that I work with all of my clients kind of creates a roadmap. And Sherry, the first step is we have to notice the conflict. We have to understand and believe that that anxiety is the alert or the alarm. And so once we become aware of the conflict, we can move on to understanding that the conflict between the expectations of others that we have learned and our desires, we now know that they're a separate thing that are creating that conflict, creating anxiety. And now we have the permission to choose of ourselves which one we really want to follow. And then we have the ability to acknowledge that there is fear. That's the essence of anxiety. And once we accept that, then we realize that we really have the ability to lessen the sentiment by acknowledging the fear. Then we get to choose which one and reclaim our authority in that decision. And then, the biggest step that comes with my clients is the ability to release the guilt that's tied to anxiety because if we're not aware of it and we choose something that we shouldn't do, right? And choose what we want to do, so often there's an element of guilt because we've abandoned those old rules that were taught to us, almost like we are absolutely refusing the edicts of our caretakers. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And then when we realize why those rules were taught to us originally, those expectations, we have the ability to realize we no longer need them. But it's got to be driven home in such a way that we're able to separate the two elements that create that emotion of anxiety. And I cannot tell you the countless examples from my clients that, like you already mentioned, in our coaching together, Sherry, it's life changing
Mhm.
because then we can live as the good-hearted women that they actually are and realize that you have determined you are already good because of your own internal code, not because of those expectations. And when a good-hearted woman, she moves through that process, anxiety, like you just said, goes away, it loses its power, it becomes freedom.
Yeah.
And, I love how you put it that it changed your life.
Yeah.
This is something I'd really love everybody to understand, Shiri, is that anxiety is like a smoke alarm going off. The smoke alarm is not a fire, is it?
No.
It's what's telling us that we need to look for what's burning and help save our lives, right? Anxiety is doing the same thing. If we listen to it, it's just the alarm.
Hmm. I think what I like about this approach is that it's not asking women to ignore their feelings or just to push through them, but it asks you to get curious. And I also like, like I said before, there were a lot of circumstances going on in my life that I couldn't change, but I did come to an acceptance, figure out what I was fearful of, and accept whatever those possible outcomes were, and do the best I could to, you know, kind of mitigate some of them.
Yep.
So I think the question becomes how, not how do you make this go away, but what is the anxiety trying to show me?
I love how you put that. And something that you just referenced in there triggered something for me to want to
Hmm.
communicate to everybody. And that is, I've said it before on our episodes, but this is some of the most important things that good-hearted women will ever understand in their life because anxiety is so powerful. When we understand and accept that fear is present within it, we then have to realize all of our life we've been taught to bury the fear. Like you just mentioned, we got to push through it, not push it down, because it's the most damaging to us if we suppress it, if we hide from it. Fear will control our emotional lives completely until we acknowledge its existence, which is in itself antithetical to what we've been taught because we're taught to hide from fear, that it's a vulnerability, right?
Mm.
That we must hide it from everybody else. But the reality is, as soon, and I say in my coaching, it's almost like a paradox because fear can control us completely until we acknowledge its existence. And then it begins to lose all power in a weird way. But the essence of that is all from our unconscious emotional mind in an attempt to protect us from what we have been feeling and taught all of our life.
Mhm. I think another key component in that, and thinking back to my work with you and accepting that I was a good-hearted woman, I would be riddled with fear of making a bad decision. But accepting that I was a good-hearted woman and I always made decisions based on myself and others around me really helped too.
I love that.
So I wouldn't be so afraid of it anymore.
I love that. That is the element of confidence. Like you said before, fear of being judged, fear of disappointing somebody else. But when good-hearted women who are already kind, considerate, compassionate, they're already, unfortunately, most of the time putting their needs last or at least secondary, right?
Mhm.
And as you discovered, and we did in another episode, where ladies, when you focus on your desires, because you already are compassionate and considerate about those around you, you already value and evaluate your desires in comparison to theirs. And in one of the other episodes, we use the example of you going to the gym
Mhm.
and you felt that it was, you were being selfish and you would have anxiety about, whether or not you could go to the gym and feel guilty about taking time away from your son and taking time away from relationships. But ladies, when you do things for yourself, it reflects positively on every single person that is a good-hearted person in your world.
Mhm.
It reflects positively on every one of your children, of your relationships, because you're more healthy, you're more at calm and at peace.
Mhm. And as I said before, it was life-changing, so it brings to mind another analogy that I used to use all the time too, the unlocked gate. I think that story fits here too.
I love this one because in workshop Sherry, I actually make people close their eyes and imagine this. But okay, ladies, here's where it is. Imagine that you're standing in front of a gate that you believed was locked all of your entire life. You've rattled it, you've pushed it, you've cried in front of it, and one day you just decide to try the latch and it opens. The gate was never locked, ladies. You just didn't know you had permission to open it. And in that analogy, Sherry, that gate is self trust. That gate is choice. That gate is freedom. And what that analogy is, ladies, is to let you know that those old expectations are the perceived lock. You metaphorically can open that gate and merely walk through. And when a good hearted woman stops living from the shoulds or the supposed tos, anxiety, Sherry, has nothing left to feed on because that is the ingredient that creates anxiety itself.
I really love that image because it really helped me understand that I had more choice and power, even in the chaos, than I ever realized. So, again, that analogy helped a lot. Powerful. Powerful. I think what I hope women will take away from this is, anxiety isn't your enemy. It's an invitation to pay attention and to reconnect. I mean, it's a signal.
Perfectly put.
Mhm.
Ladies, you were never broken. You were wearing a coat that was never yours to have to wear forever. The gate was never locked. The smoke alarm is going off. You're merely free now to choose differently.
Mm. Such a powerful topic, David. I really appreciate you doing this one because I think we all live with so much anxiety and we don't know why. So I think this is so powerful. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I mean, if this episode spoke with you, share it with every woman because you never know who needs to hear it, to hear that she's not broken and maybe it'll, touch her and give her freedom. David also has a worksheet that goes along with this episode to help you with the anxiety you feel. So just email us at info@captivecoachingandempowerment.com. And we'll see you on the next episode of Her Discovered Power.
Thank you, Sherry, for doing this with me. I say almost every episode. I can't imagine doing with anybody else. And one last message I'd like to leave for our good hearted ladies listening is this: fear that we have learned to hide from all of our life can now be an ally. And Sherry, you've heard me say many, many times, fear is truly like a sword. Ladies, when we use it as an ally and acknowledge its existence, it can be the motivation and the power to slay dragons. But when we hide it and use it inward, only when it hurts is us.
Mhm.
And it is so damaging. And anxiety is one of the worst of those of the impacts of fear, Sherry, because it not only affects us emotionally, it affects us, ladies, so physiologically. The stress, the heart attacks, the strokes. It is one of the biggest killers that we have. Get this, Sherry, and this blows my clients away. It's one of the biggest killers that we have entire control as to whether or not it has the ability to kill us.
Mhm. It is. I'm telling you, it's freedom. Once you learn to process that and recognize it's true freedom.
Right?
Mhm.
So, ladies, thank you so much for listening. And as always, Sherry and I are here to try to help you be the she that you were meant to be. And if you really like this episode, I developed a course, and there's in-depth articles on our website, captivecoachingandempowerment.com. Check it out, follow us, whatever we can do to help you. Send us a note if our stuff really helps you and resonates in you. Sherry, thank you so much. We'll see you next time, everybody.